Hello everyone, it's Elizabeth again. So today we're going to be talking about the RPG fight mechanic system that I created. So as you can see, based on my various collection, Fire Emblem, Berserk, Demon Slayer, I grew up as an otaku in the early 90s and 2000s, so I love anime and manga. So as a result, I became obsessed with hard and soft power magic systems. And I always wanted to create one for myself that was a little more reflective. I felt that a lot of the shonen pieces were really fixated on overpowered gimmicks, power-ups being the chosen one, and I really was inspired by characters that through their own volition would slowly build their way up for the series, and not through a magical MacGuffin or a training montage, but showing that ultimately consistency counts. And that is what I had in mind where I created my magic system. So my magic system is based on who you were in the first world, our world, and how trauma can help build you instead of break you. So in most fantasy series, you have the magic MacGuffin, you have the chosen one, you have that they're descended from someone or have some specialty knowledge, or how super important or special because they're from this certain bloodline. In this series, the idea is that everybody can fight. The powerhouse classes, the soul type, you have very high attack, very high stamina. So you absorb attacks from others physically, and you're able to manifest them and dish out the same kind of damage. So the more you can endure, the more damage you can dish out. So as a result, the powerhouses feel the weight of every single attack, feel the power of every single slash. They feel the intensity of all their emotions being riled at, and they have this very strong sense of justice because they truly believed in their cause and ideals, and that's why they manifested in that form. But as a result, they have a really, really low defense. So, case in point, really high attack, really high stamina, they never quit, really low defense. So basically, they're a glass cannon. So in their world, they're able to fight, and they're able to dish out damage, and they're able to endure it, but it will take a number of days, weeks to heal, unless they have a licensed healer on hand. So as a result, a lot of them do travel in pairs, or either hire the assistants, or a lot of them unfortunately kidnap or force healers to be around them to compensate for their lackings. And that's a whole other power dynamic of looking at, do we value people for who they are or what they do? So the tacticians are a little more balanced. They are people who are more pragmatic. They valued the physical comforts of this world. And the reason why a lot of tacticians in my world are from the land of veterans and suicides is they have this nostalgia, they have this sentimentality for the past. So as a result, they can summon items from their timeline. So say if you were from 1937's Berlin, you can summon the pistol that you had during your campaign when you were guarding yourself in Poland during the invasion of the multiple different factions coming into your town, both from Germany and from Russia, because during that time period, that's what kept you safe, and that's what gives you sentimentality, thus you can summon it. So you can summon weapons from your timeline, you have a balance of stats between attack, defense, and stamina, and you can briefly alter your body, but it does take away from your stamina. So you can briefly turn into an animal, you briefly can turn into different genders, you can disguise yourself for maybe approximately 1 or 2 hours. But mainly it's used as a way to manipulate, trick, or evade attacks. So in a world which is heavily dominated by powerhouses, the tacticians got to use every trick in the book they have to survive. So it's not hitting harder, it's acting smarter and using what you know to your advantage. But it's also being tied to the past, why a lot of powerhouses, they don't really believe in the past, they just look forward to the future, so they keep charging on. So ideology-wise, they are opposed in contrast, and their designs are done in that way. Then you have the healers. Now, the healers, if I were to break it down, are only about 2% of this world's population. So what makes the healers so unique? Healers have access to everyone's collective memory and consciousness, and it can start in many different ways. So if I shook your hand and I'm a healer, I'll have access to every memory from your first world life, from the moment you took steps in your first snow when you were 5, to your prom when you were 17 or 18, to the time when you were sitting in a sunflower field when you were 42, to when you were in the retirement home at 72 and fell down by your walker. So having the power of a healer, you have the power to hold the weight of everyone's collective memory, but you also have unlimited information to your potential combatant. So in a fight scenario, if you're a healer, not only can you heal your own wounds and heal other people's wounds on the battlefield, you have an ungodly amount of memory and overwhelm, because now you know everyone's strengths and weaknesses, and because you're going to be able to use that to your advantage, you're going to manifest that in any way you can. So the healers are not completely defenseless. That was the one thing in anime, and shonen in particular, the healers were disproportionately made female and were really just constantly a tool for other people to achieve their goals, but also they had no agency. So they were forced to placate and really just bolster the affairs of other male characters, which I honestly felt like it was a waste. So I was looking at other models like Avatar: The Last Airbender, and looking at the dynamic ways, particularly through using elements, using collective consciousness and memory, like Lois Lowry's The Giver, where you have access to other people's consciousness, and then also really exploring what would the psychological toll be of being a healer. So the interesting thing about powerhouses and tacticians, if they are KO'd or knocked unconscious, or their body is destroyed in a way in which they are, technically they're all dead, but they can still feel pain, they are killed, the worst thing that can happen is their body will still keep the damage. However, depending on if you have a skilled healer, you could have a scar, you could have a limped foot, you could have a slight disability, but ultimately, depending on the skill tree of the healer and depending on how extensive the wounds are, you could get that patched up. So there are consequences for doing stupid things. However, it's not the end-all be-all. For healers, the main consequence in a combat encounter is you lose your memory of people. Now, a terrifying notion of this is when they are hunted, unfortunately, for their healing ability, they lose their memory of people. And we think, oh, well, that's not a big deal. So you still have, where things are located. Okay, you have your concept of space. You have your concept of yourself. Okay, that's fine. That's not terrifying. That's not psychological horror. Okay, well, you still have the skills you've all retained for life. Well, that's fine. So are you your job? You are what you do, right? Are you a doctor by profession? Okay, you can still do surgery. You're still smart. You still conceptually understand vocab words. You understand basic mechanics of going to the bathroom and being able to feed yourself. Okay, that's not a big deal. Okay, you know where you grew up, where you are located in the city, where you are relatively spaced to others. You're not going to get lost. However, who are we without our relationships to others? Imagine in every battle encounter, you have to think to yourself, is it worth losing my memory of every current friend and family member I know? Most people, it's not worth it. So basically, in one fight, you could end up as someone with dementia and Alzheimer's, where your long-term and even short-term memory of that person is completely erased. And for healers, that's not a risk they're willing to take. So due to the mechanics of these worlds, these different factions have to pair up and group in different ways. So similar to Fire Emblem, you cannot bulldozer your way through the campaign. every single member of your party is essential to get from point A to point B. So in my series, what I love having the system base is, one, it's fair, where there's no overpowered beings. Everyone can and will fight and will use it to their advantage. Two, the weaponization of it isn't overwhelming, where it's one person with a certain bloodline or gift, and thus they're able to take advantage of that, which not showing any ingenuity. It's not how big or powerful you are, it's how smart you are. It's contextualizing your environment. It's using what you know about your opponent to your advantage. And as a person who trained in martial arts extensively in college, who honestly loves Chinese sabers, swords, using different styles of weaponry, I think the range could definitely be explored in such an expansive way, which is absolutely gorgeous. For healers, I even go beyond that and show that some of them can turn into animals and beasts from different mythologies, like werewolves, mermaids, kelpies, fukas. Then you have mages, which are very akin to Harry Potter, which are witches and wizards, and they have bloodlines going all the way back. However, they hold this vulnerability because if they lose their memory of their family, they lose their ability and power to truly be themselves. And then you have alchemists who have a gambling mechanic, and that is more for a metaphysical way to talk about how addiction can overwhelm people, what people are willing to sacrifice from power, and overall, how does one become whole without letting these things consume us? So the healers have all these cool fight mechanics within themselves, amongst themselves, but they are constantly juxtapositioned next to tacticians and powerhouses who believe that the world has been left for them to inherit. So all of these factions, all these RPG mechanics are balancing each other out to have an even playing field and to really logically look at what would happen if people were dealt a hand and what would they do with that deck. Another interesting mechanic is it's extremely hard, but I show some examples of some soul types changing. Now they have to have dramatic willingness to change on the part of the individual soul type. So I had it where one soul type was a healer and it got converted to a powerhouse through a series of actions. And then I had another circumstance where the other character was a tactician and changed gears to a healer. So it's showing that if the person had a dramatic conversion, if the person had this moment where they held themselves accountable and fundamentally rebuilt themselves from their core, their soul would show and manifest that. But that has to be very deliberate and done with purpose. So a deep dive that I want to go into is Raphael, and he controls blood, which is a very weird element to really think about, because when you're thinking about it, you're sitting there and like, okay, so healers, right? Wouldn't you assume that they one, stereotypically, a lot of them are female, a lot of them who are medical researchers or doctors, they're seen in this very almost saint-like appeal. I actually really leaned into Korean and Japanese horror with my character, Raphael. He is Japanese and Korean. His original name is Satori. Raphael is his adopted name when he gets recruited by Theo and Aurora to join the Red Domain. And he is the team's healer. And in a disturbing chain of events, he has a medical background, which makes him extremely useful for the team, but also he's able to forge it. So he's able to weaponize his blood by taking the metal alloy from the bone marrow and turn it into different items, like a tanto, katanas, sabers, axe, hammer. And the idea is that your scars become your strength. They become a manifestation of what and who you need to be. And then the weird part also about Raphael is because he survived the events of the Edo earthquake and the Kobe earthquake that coincide into a backlash of anti-Korean sentiment, he gets brought into his family with Hansaku. So they're all growing up in 1930s Japan. He carries that weight and the psychological toll that goes with it. And when he gets sold off and is experimented by the government, and he ends up in this weird comatose kind of state, that stays with him. So his dream ultimately was to become a doctor. So when he came into the second world, he became a solar heal type. However, as a healer, he has this cruel maliciousness about him. So it manifested in this weird form of controlling blood. So on record, there's only been a limited amount of them, but you can imagine how dangerous that can be. If someone can control your heart rate, if someone can control how much blood pumps through your veins, if someone could take the metal and the minerals that are in it and control the currents of it, that's unbelievably terrifying. The ability to form platelets in a short period of time, so if you get a cut, you can immediately heal it. He's able to remove blood from clothes very quickly, and he's able to crystallize it. However, in the beginning, I do have it where I show he's incredibly unstable. He's not able to move his body. He becomes very skeletal because he's using his own blood as a weapon. So as a result, he becomes very iron deficient, and he becomes anemic. So he's very pale initially, and then upon joining the Red Domain, he gains more confidence, he gets more official training, he's not using his own blood carelessly anymore, he's actually able to fuse it with his boots when he's able to walk around, so he's able to hang off the sides of different buildings during the training. Before, Aurora had to carry him around in a coffin when he would faint. And then it gets to the point where he's able to stand on his own 2 feet. He's a healthy body weight. He's more in the sun, so he's a little on the slightly tanner side. And he's able to make jewelry where he's able to take them, turn them into a weapon, turn them back into jewelry, go back and forth, turn them into rings. And he becomes a leather and steel maker. So it becomes a machinist. And he's able to manifest all those different items. So they take the thing that was your weakest element and makes it the strongest. And as a result, as a healer, he's able to heal Aurora and Thea's injuries very quickly. He's able to make sure he is guarded when he's on the team. And then the other scary part is he has access to other people's memory by getting samples of their blood. So in a way, it's this weird gothic vampirism where you have this person who has a disproportionate amount of power and really makes you question, are they the person who should be responsible or would actively not abuse that power? And when you see him, even though he's technically a healer, it's challenging these stereotype notions of what would happen if we realistically were to give this almost godlike ability to someone who's only human, and what that does to someone psychologically over time. So Raphael is a really fascinating case because I found the concept of someone using that in a medical way, but seeing it used in a combative way to create cool and interesting militarized swords, and to be rapidly able to shape and mold them to any environment and scenario, and to have the backlogs of all your enemies' strengths and weaknesses, and to throw that in a matchup, it's absolutely dazzling. So when I coordinate fight scenes with him, Aurora, and a lot of their different competitors, it's an absolutely fun and enjoyable ride. Same thing with Theo, same thing with Aurora. A lot of them are heavily based on my experiences doing small circle jiu-jitsu at Loyola University. I love looking up Chinese martial arts as well. Theo specializes in using katanas, but he can also use tantos. He's also very accomplished with using an obi, which is an onbo. It's a giant yumi bow, which is about 5 or 6 feet tall. It's very hard to string, but he shows excellent accuracy with it. He also knows how to ride horses, which is fantastic. Aurora can do these as well, but she has more of a specialty in Kung Fu and using small circle jiu-jitsu and propelling her body weight around because she's a lot smaller, and she uses Chinese sabers mainly. And Raphael takes a note out of her book and uses both a combo of Korean, Chinese, Japanese martial arts, and uses different metal and steel items. The concept of using blood and steel and metal, because the Red Domain's mantra is strength, loyalty, and blood. Everything in this world will not remain. So it's the concept that you've got strength through Thea, where it's being consistent and that consistency counts, and ultimately you will be a member of the group, but you will also lead that group if you believe and be consistent in your dream. Loyalty to one's cause, loyalty to one's family will always be rewarded and will build interconnections and alliances that you never thought possible. That's probably found through Aurora. And finally, Raphael, it's not only bloodline for family, but it's the concept of chosen family. So who you choose to align yourself with aligns itself in blood. So these characters, through the RPG fight mechanics, is a not only symbolic way of showing their growth, it is a tangible way of showing their growth through both the fight choreography and their actual interactions, and showing how the soul types reflect their psychological state as they go through the different stages of their life in the second world.